So good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Namaste and a very warm welcome to all of you to the Blub World Web Talks 181st episode. In the last 180 episodes, we have interacted with nearly 3,000 plus school leaders on this very platform where they've shared their ideas, opinions, innovations, and what all new are they doing in the education space. So नमस्कार, आप सभी का स्वागत है ब्लब वर्ल्ड के 181वें एपिसोड में। पिछले 180 एपिसोड में हम लोग करीबन 3,000 से ज्यादा स्कूल लीडर से बातचीत कर चुके, उनके आइडियाज, उनके इनोवेशंस जान चुके और ये देख चुके कि शिक्षा कैसे बदल रही है और उन्हें वो साथ में कहां ले जा रही है. So thank you so much everyone for joining us today. Most importantly, while you do your conversation on this platform, remember two things. The first, think of the Blub World Web Talks as a speaking sprint, not as a speaking marathon. So once your speaking time is over, you might get muted. If you get muted, please don't get offended. It's just to finish the activity on time and keep it crisp and entertaining for everyone. Secondly, it is a bilingual platform. So you can use English or Hindi, any of these two languages. Try sticking to any of these two, because if you want to use a third one, you can, but I won't get it. So try English and Hindi during this conversation. Most importantly, this is a platform which is meant to change, influence, impact, and improve opinions of people in the education space, sharing best practices, what all new is going on within your ecosystems. So today in this 181st episode, we'll be talking about somebody who is the consumer, the customer, the most important element in the whole education eco space. And that's the individual that is in a space or a time in life when his decision making goes haywire a lot of times. Now, is it something that comes out of our perception that we don't take them seriously? Or is it something that we do intentionally that we don't take them seriously? So let's now try to know from all the people who are here with us that what teens want. कि ये किशोर सच में चाहते क्या हैं, इनकी इच्छाएं क्या हैं, and ये दुनिया को किस तरीके से perceive करते हैं. So today, in the next 30 to 40 minutes that you're here with us, let's try to know from all our amazing speakers that what teens want, and specifically from schools. And when we say schools here, we mean K-12 institutions or kindergarten to 12th class schools. And one more element in the whole discussion that has to be taken care while we discuss about all this, we are looking at things from the perspective of a teenager. We'll be listening to a teenager, but at the same time, you can bring your expertise of how do you perceive the education ecosystem from your standpoint and what's your perception of a teen's perception. So thank you so much, everyone. A very warm welcome once again to the Blub World Web Talks 181st episode. Let me invite the first speaker for today to set the ball rolling and put things in the right context so that we get some of the most amazing content in the next 60 minutes. A very warm welcome, Dr. William Painter, the president of Acacia University from Tempe, Arizona, US. Dr. William, over to you to initiate the roundtable for the first 4 minutes. Please unmute yourself and a very warm welcome.
Thank you very much. This is really a great honor for me to be here. And I'll tell you, to be among such luminaries, and it is quite early in the morning where I am. So I hope you don't mind me looking a little slit-eyed. My interest here is twofold. One, I have a 14-year-old son, and so I'm always asking him, "So how's school going?" And he always says, "Good." And that's not, I don't think that's a very full answer. And one day he said, you know, Dad, I really wish these teachers could learn how to teach better. They seem to focus on the easy stuff, and then they don't teach us the hard stuff. And I need help with the hard stuff. Now, that's one boy in one school, right? But I'm the president of a university that is, and I'm fresh. I mean, I'm still wet behind the ears. Fresh. We've just taken up this university, and it focuses on teachers. So when Daksh says, well, think about these kids are going to school. Well, I'm really interested in those kids. We don't teach them. We're a university. We teach teachers. But my end game are those kids. How do I reach them? What do they want? What do they need? Where are they going? What are their lives going to need? What will their lives need from us to make their lives valuable and to make them contributing members of society? It's like teaching doctors, sure, you want to know what the doctors want, but at the end of the day, it's the patient that matters, not the doctor. And so I'm quite interested to hear our folks here on the panel, and I'd be very interested to hear any feedback from the kids that are participating. It's we're entering into a very different world. I mean, if you're a teenager right now, you've spent 2 years under a pandemic that has been very, very difficult to deal with. It's changed all of our lives, and it's forced us to really rethink what is education, what is the purpose of community, who am I, where am I going, sort of an existential crises on a global level. And I really want to tell you how much I appreciate you inviting me to this symposium, because these are questions that dog me, that bother me, and I don't have good answers for them. And I think the more we speak, the more we exchange ideas globally, I think the better off we are in terms of reaching these. The teenagers watching this video are global citizens. Okay, when I was a teenager, none of this was possible. But now, you know, you could get this old guy from the United States come in here and talk about education. The people who are attending this are global citizens, and we need to understand who they are and what they want, so that we can help them. It's going to be their world, not ours, that comes up. So, I can talk forever. So I'll just stop there and hand it over to the other folks here. Thank you very much, Daksh.
Thank you so much, Dr. William, for initiating the roundtable in the most apt sense, I would say. You put in the perspective of your own teenager at home who still thinks that teachers should learn a bit more of teaching. So it's a very important element where you need to understand feedback, because if we look at most of the education systems globally, we take student feedback, we fill up those forms, but we don't take those forms very seriously. We normally put them together, put them in a dump, and that's all. So this is something that should not be done. Most importantly, because the kind of world that we're entering in is a world of these teenagers. These are the digital natives. They know the ecosystem, the environment better than us. And if we don't listen to them, we are the ones who will be losing. So let's now try to know from some more school leaders their opinions on what teens want. So let me invite the next speaker for today, Mr. Manish Panwar, the principal of DC Model International School from Ferozpur city, Punjab, India. Manish, over to you for the next 3 minutes. Please unmute yourself, and a very warm welcome.
Good evening, Daksh. Good evening to all my fellow colleagues. And like Dr. William correctly said, like he's a father of 14-year-old. The same goes with me, like being a father of 13-year-old son. And once your son is studying in your own school, so you get ground realities. So I can easily relate. And what exactly teen want, and especially when almost 2 years of pandemic situation, had this question been asked 2 years back, so our answer would have been different. But exactly after exactly with this pandemic situation, when the students were locked down inside home for almost a year, then the school opened in the phase-wise manner, so their thought process are entirely changed. So at this juncture, beside academic and other things, I can see that as a principal, when you interact with students after pandemic situation, so they want a listening ear and an understanding mind, from teacher's perspective. Because when you Google it something, so you open so many windows at the same time in your desktop, and sometimes it gets hanged when you open so many windows. So similarly, in the last 1.5 years, the teens, they are involved with so many activities. And please, pandemic situation, earlier we used to tell them, okay, keep away from mobile phone, keep away from mobile phone. But now for the last 2 years, we have given mobile phones in their hand, for online teaching. Now at this, when the schools have started opening at least in India and this part of world, Punjab side, okay, so things are a little bit better. But there's still how to get away from that situation or the practice which which they were forced, or as far as academics is concerned. So they want an understanding mind, and there are so many questions in them. So beside academics, we have to see the co-scholastic aspect, which is very important at this moment of time. Because if we look after the co-scholastic domains, be it sports, be it co-curricular activities, be it functions, okay, so then we can take their academic aspects as well. But sometimes, and thanks to NEP National Education Policy 2020 of India, which has highlighted most of the aspects. But the more concerned, as a principal, my main concern is the implementation level. Be it they have talked about the computational thinking, they have talked about gaming, they have talked about the coding, data analysis, but it was there in NCF 2005 as well, which was released 50 almost 16 years back. But the problem is at the implementation level, at the branch level, or at the school level. So that we have to see that. And plus, as I said, being, as you correctly mentioned the term, today's students are digital natives. They are born with gadgets. And we as teachers, we are digital immigrants. We are learning those technology. And thanks to, one of the positive aspects that I always tell to COVID situation, at least the educators, they have become tech, net savvy or the tech savvy. Earlier, those who were very interested, they were into that technology. But this is the one positive aspect. So I got your point. So they want to be learned in that manner in which they can understand and they can relate with their day-to-day activities. Thank you, Daksh.
Thank you so much, Manish ji. So whenever you see my hand up, that means you have the last 30 seconds to conclude your speech. So I'll try to summarize what you said, some of the important points so that we can take them ahead in the discussion. First, most important, I think you have an insider edge when you have your own teenager within your school. So you'll always get the ground report and that will be quite real. And I think a very important element that you brought in was that students now, after the post-pandemic scenario, they need listeners rather than people who are just teaching them. Now they need an ecosystem where even they can share what they think, what they perceive for the world. And from absolutely no mobiles to only mobile has actually opened a lot of windows within their mind, which bringing their brain to a stop or to a halt. I think a very important point that you mentioned, because since William is here, India just got a new education policy that our Honorable Prime Minister announced in this year. And we are very hopeful that it will be very innovative. It will change the education scenario. And Manish ji brought out a point that it is something which has taken a lot of thought even from the National Curriculum Framework Policy, which was framed in 2005. So I must not say this, but I'm saying this. In India, when you create a policy, the biggest challenge that we face is we make amazing policies. We are great on paper, but the execution elephant does not move so easily. And that's where the challenge really comes for us. So let me invite the next school leader today to share their ideas. The next school leader comes from our neighboring country with a very different perspective on education, because the reason why I'm saying a very different perspective is because when you come from a country which is a little small in scale, the challenges change, the thought process changes, the policy level ideation changes. So what does a student in that ecosystem think on education, and what do teens want from that education ecosystem? Let's listen to them. A very warm welcome, Mr. Suman Poudel, the principal of Ankuram Academy from Chitwan, Bagmati, Nepal. Sumanji, over to you for the next 3 minutes, and a very warm welcome.
Okay, namaste. So thank you so much. As I would also say what William and Manish has connected to the platform, although I do have a son who is just 10, so he has not yet reached to the bracket of teenager, but yes, today I have one of my student, Mr. Pravash, is also here. So I get along with my students here, and most of the thing that they want now is like they want extracurricular activities, and not just extracurricular activities, but like they want their teachers, they want the principal to get along with them. Maybe it could be a few minutes of basketball in the morning with them, or in the evening if you could manage to take out time to play futsal. And not only that, as both the previous speakers has said, that the present generation who has just come out of this pandemic, where they were so engrossed with mobiles, we can totally say that this present generation is not about YouTubes. Now this present generation is all about those 30 seconds TikTok videos. That means they have a very short span of concentration level. The amount of speed, the videos that they watch, the kind of games they play, to be very honest, I think, since my student, the teenager, is also in this platform, even when we are speaking for just 3 minutes, he tends to, yawn. Why? Because our speech would look very slow as compared to the videos that they are watching. So the kind of exposure they have, and more importantly, after this pandemic, and not only I'm talking about the overall mass, the kind of fear, they have been so much engrossed. Like, for example, if we are talking about students who is in class 12 now, they pass their class 10 exam online. They have done their class 11 exam online. So now in 12, now we are having physical classes and the exams will be physical. I think that is the biggest fear that they will have to face. And sometimes I think this is something which my students, I tend to be a little more, friendly with my students, and they tend to share a lot of things. There are a lot of things. There are a few things that we can adjust. There are a few things that we can get along, but as we say it, right, the education perspective, the education, the questions that we ask, the analytical questions that it needs to be asked to the students has to be changed. And we have been talking about the pressure the students have. The teenagers also are going through a lot of mental pressure. So mental health and a counselor in the school, as Daksh has also said, like, it's like not about taking feedbacks and putting it in a file, but, getting along with them, and trying to solve the problems, taking out those insecurities. So I think that is what I have to say. And though, since, as he has also mentioned, we come from a very small country, and, I get to the east and the west of the country. So, these are the probably not only my students, but other students to which I get to interact. They always want their teachers to play along with them. So that's what I would say. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Suman. I think a very elaborate perspective you had. I think you were quite friendly with the teenagers at your institution, because your insights were telling us that very clearly. Teens want extracurricular activities. They always want the leaders to engage with them. They don't want to be in a didactic atmosphere where they have a teacher who's a sage on the stage. They don't want that anymore. They need engagement. They want you to get connected. They don't have a big attention span. So the biggest change that we are seeing in the kind of students that we have right now is there are children who have a very shallow knowledge of everything, but they don't go deep into anything. Now, this is something that is really challenging, because in the coming times, only peripheral knowledge about everything, would this really build a good individual, a good citizen? This is something that we'll be talking in the open floor next, where I'll bring in William and Manish, everyone again together on this. I think you can, put your thoughts together on this, that would such an individual really create a flourishing society when we imagine it in the future? Let me now move to the next school leader to understand from them that what teens want from their perspective. A very warm welcome, Mrs. Sunita Malde, the principal of Kalindi School from Jamnagar, Gujarat. Sunita ji, over to you for the next 3 minutes, and a very warm welcome.
Okay, namaste all. Thank you. From listening to Williams, Suman, and even Mahendra, all of them have their own perspectives in a very true manner. Because now, as we are also seeing after the pandemic situation, kids are coming to school. They don't want the school type of teaching. They want all the other extracurricular activities. They want to be on the field. Because the closed schoolroom and the school closed homes have made them more, they don't want to sit in one place. After every 40 minutes, they want to move out of the classroom and they want to go on the ground. So if you allow them to do all the extracurricular activities, we ask them to move out, they are happy. The time you make them come back to the classroom, start a session, the challenges are the child always wants to move out. The teachers, those who are in the classrooms, are continuously having this challenge. The child is not ready to sit. They're not ready to listen. They're not ready to even, some of them are not able to write in the right manner. Writing is the biggest challenge where the teacher is facing with the kids. And even talking personally, I am a mother of 2 kids. Both are quite grown up. One is in her 3rd year of college, where she is even facing, I am facing with her the same problem, where the child is at home and after a year or so, she's going to the college. She's even having the same things. Okay? She's not interested in being in the class more than being at home. So kids are having these 2 situations where they're both not ready to come out of their comfort zone, come back to the channel which they were prior, and after this, starting studies. The real challenge goes out over there. They all, on the screen time, the PCs, the YouTubers have given them maximum knowledge. They don't want now knowledge. They want only free time. They want to love time where there will be recreations, where they will be able to learn new things, where they will be able to put up their knowledge in the real situations. So this is which we are seeing, which I am facing daily with my teachers, with my teammates. Every time we are having this situation where the child is not in the classroom, not ready to study, not ready to even put up their own thoughts, because where they've already, they know the knowledge, so we have. Even if I have to learn, the YouTube is ready, the Google is ready to give it. But the teachers at school have to start understanding. They have to change. The pandemic has changed, but they have changed the students also. They have changed their thought processes also. So here we are having both the challenges. We have got a group of students, those who have complete knowledge of each and everything. Along with them, the parenting even is there. So, okay. Okay. So I feel I have put up my point. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sunita ma'am. And I think you have actually given a good perspective of things, where you've given the complete view of the value chain, that there are some students who have gone really deep into content, some of them who have not gone deep, and most importantly, the source of knowledge now is a YouTube or a Google. The teacher is no more the source of knowledge. So the teacher now has to think of herself or himself as somebody who's helping them become analysts, because that's what the student now wants to do. They want to apply things, they want to analyze things, they want to get into the hands-on stuff within education. Now they don't want to listen to content. So now we have listened to all the speakers on what they think that what teens want. Now let's have an opinion from a teenager that what do they exactly want. Now, before I actually go to the teenager, the most important element I want to point out before you actually go to the teenager, you have a perspective of life that you've created from your experience. The people that you've listened to, they've also created a perception of life from their experience. But the biggest difference is you have space for experimentation, which they don't have now. And the problem with the current generation, I would not say the current generation, but the current ecosystem, is that experimentation has become more important than experience. Because all the experience a machine can also do. That's machine learning. They put experience together, and there's only experimentation or innovation that a machine cannot do. That's where a human becomes important. And I think that's the biggest power these teenagers have right now. And that's the edge that you have over technology. So let's listen to a teenager that what teens want from a school. A very warm welcome, Mr. Pravash Chuke from grade 12 of Ankuram Academy, Chitwan, Bagmati, Nepal. Pravash, over to you for the next 3 minutes, and a very warm welcome.
Good afternoon and namaste everyone. My name is Pravash Chuke and I am from Chitwan, Nepal. I currently study in grade 12 at Ankuram Academy. And as a teen, the very first thought that came up in my mind when Suman sir asked me to speak on this session was that will my perspective match with other people? And now I have the answer. Yes, it does match. So the current generation's education system has changed drastically. Many students have demands and requests in their minds that they cannot share due to some anxiety problems. Sessions like this can help the students emotionally and mentally as well. So let's come to the main topic of today's session. What do teens want? As a teenager myself, I have lots of things I want in my school, starting from a healthy learning environment. We students want to learn in peace without any disturbance. 7 out of 10 students teenagers say that there are many disruptive students in their classes. So a healthy and peaceful environment should be maintained. Moving to the next point, we teenagers think our school as our second home. We see our teachers as guardians. So the relationship between teachers and students play a vital role in the development of the student. As a teen, we face many changes like in emotionally and physically. And there should be a proper guidance by the teachers in those stops. As I mentioned earlier, the education system has changed drastically. Students should be able to get more practical education. Nowadays, uh, practical education should be given more prioritized than theory education. If we are exposed to different real life situations, ultimately we can excel in the future due to those experiences. And for the last point, what I think is that we need more extracurricular activities in our school. Extracurricular activities helps us to helps us in many different ways. So extracurricular activities should be given more priorities, and extracurricular activities we think itself as a refreshment and meditation. As Suman sir mentioned earlier, he comes with us and plays basketball in the morning, or in the evening he plays futsal. In those way we can develop the relationship between teachers and students as well, and we can give more focus to extracurricular activities also. And also, for the last point, I would like to say that the education system should be ready for anything. As pandemic struck during 2020, the whole world was struck in a crisis. Due to that, many education system could not proceed and work in a proper way. In remote places, they could not conduct any classes due to the pandemic. Take responsibility and be ready for any changes that may occur in the near future. That's all, sir. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Pravesh. So I think the question with which you started puts a lot of perspective to the complete conversation that we had. That the first thing that you got in your mind that was that will my perspective match those of the adults? So I think there's a big need to address this specific way of understanding things, that why do we prepare conformists within our classes? Why don't we let them experiment? Why don't we let them innovate? Is there a challenge in the teacher's training aspect of it? Why do we want to discipline a teenager rather than making him an explorer? So is there a challenge within the teacher's training? William, I want your perspective on this, that do we really liberate a child when he comes to a classroom, or do we just try to find one more way of, challenging him or telling him that, okay, you're not allowed to do this, you're not allowed to do that? Is it a problem that has sprung out from the teacher training process in
it? There was a gentleman named Ken Johnson, Sir Ken Johnson, out of the UK, and he did an analysis of the US K-12 education. And he said at the kindergarten level, kids are very, very creative. You ask them, how do you, what could you make with a paperclip? They come up with about 400 different answers. I mean, just wild, stuff. By the time they graduate, they can only come up with 2 answers. So throughout the process from kindergarten to the 12th grade here in the United States, we managed to beat creativity out of children so that they are no longer as creative. Now, if we need creatives, okay, if we're an economy to grow and be sustainable and to be reach the demands of the future, we need creative people and people who can think creatively about problems. So I would say we have a serious problem in how we train teachers, how we teach teachers to teach. We teach them how to manage the classroom, okay? But we don't teach them how to think of 400 ways to use a paperclip. And I think we need those problem solvers. We're going to need those problems solvers, people who we will be confronted with problems we can't even imagine. And we need these children, these kids, they're not children, but these kids need to be prepared and armed to be able to wrestle those problems. And I think we do a very bad, I'm not talking about India here, because I don't know anything about India, but here in the States, we do a very bad job. We teach, the teachers have all the tools to manage a classroom, make them sit down, make them be quiet, make them take notes, make them turn in their homework. Well, those are that make them great for factory workers, but they don't make it great for problem solvers. And I don't have an answer. I don't have it, but I do see a problem. And so I try to keep an open mind about that. But we really must encourage and foster disciplined creativity for our children, for the next generation. That's my take on it anyway, Daksh.
So, William, thank you. I think this is a problem that's globally present across nations, across boundaries, that we are able to beat creativity out of every single child that we get. We do not preserve the explorer within them. We do not ever let them draw a world of their imagination. So, and we already, only work on control mechanics. We are building managers rather than teachers. They manage the classroom very well, but they don't preserve the exploration mode of the child or the creativity in the child. So Manish ji, now question actually is over to you. You will give us an India perspective to things, that why do we want children to always conform to an opinion of a teacher? Why do we want that? Why is discipline prioritized over everything within a classroom?
You correctly mentioned Daksh basically, and I would, I would love to, quote that case, since you can't pour from an empty cup. Like you mentioned about the teacher education, like in India, we have a B.Ed program. Earlier, we used to have 1-year program. Now with new NEP, they are talking about the 4-year integrated course. Because to deal with the challenges of 21st century student, you need to become a 21st century educators. For that, you need to be guided and trained in such a manner. If I talk about my B.Ed program, like into 1999 2000 1-year program, so we were never taught about the inclusive educations, or there were the fixed texts that we were trained about that. And with experience, when you are in as a teacher, as a principal, then you got to know so many things. So that is why, as you correctly mentioned, teachers now they are managers, how to control the class. And you don't want a graveyard silence. Yes, the silence is required, but you don't want a graveyard silence. And Dr. William correctly mentioned. And if you talk about the other day, I was watching a YouTube video by famous Mr. Kane Robinson. So his famous quote is, "School skills creativity." And he correctly mentioned that in kindergarten they can give you 400 options, and by the time they graduate from school, so they are left with 2. Because the education system is like that, we are training clerks, we are training managers who can cram the things. I'll go back to the same point. Thanks to the new education policy, if it is implemented at the fullest level, even I would say the 70 to 80%, definitely we will go ahead. Because then, like the student Pravash was saying, more extracurricular activities, more engagement. Mr. Suman can afford time, he can play basketball with students. That's very good. But most of the educators or most of the teachers or the principal, they won't get time, or they don't have time for all these activities. And that should be there. Being a sportsman, I know that. But you need to frame your curriculum. At the end of the day, it's the completion of syllabi and getting scores, academic scores. So we need to overhaul the education system in a big way, so that we can train, we can create leaders. And our job as a leader is to create more leaders. So after the schooling of 14 years from school, so we want the student become a responsible citizen who is ready to tackle any challenges. Because 20 years back, nobody thought of Amazon, nobody thought, we were not aware of Facebook. Now there were no concept of I would say SpaceX or all these things. So you don't know because after 10 or 15 years, our students will be landing up on those jobs, those jobs have not been invented yet. Okay, so this is the we are living in such an unprecedented era. So we need to train our students in such a manner so that they can be ready to tackle any challenges. For that, we need to have a 21st century skills. But again, I'll go back to say that to inculcate those skills, first the teacher should be trained with those skills. Then only they can impart those skills to students. So that is my take as far as this part is concerned.
Thank you so much, Manish. I think you brought in the extra excess overload on every single teacher to complete the syllabi within that year, within 12 months, get students to learn everything, complete that assessment, get good marks, and move on to the next classroom. Sumanji, since you are able to play a small little football game every morning with your students, so does Nepal also face a similar challenge, a similar race of completing the syllabi, or there is some relaxation either from the government end or from the society end? Because in India, there's a lot of societal pressure that also comes on a student, that you need to be either an engineer or a doctor. Everything else is not a career. So what's your perspective on this? That does Nepal have a little more conducive environment, or is it the same there as well?
Yeah, I suppose when it comes to competitiveness, it is basically the people will judge all our students, all our caliber in terms of the grades that the students have scored. If I have to talk a little bit about myself, is like, I was more involved with BBA and MBA students initially. Like, basically I worked as an MBA director. And then, we said like, I personally said that, no, I would like to go back to the school. And then the same college which I was engaged in, we started this college 3 years back. The moment we started, the pandemic also started together. But like, the idea was very clear. I made it very clear to my board of directors is like, if you are looking for somebody who would always go to the class and teach the students, I may not be the right person. I always wanted to have that environment where it's hard, it's difficult to manage time. But yes, every now and then, like, it's not like every day I'll be there, but every now and then, maybe like just 5-10 minutes before the assembly, get in there. The best part is like, when you get into the students in the playgrounds, I could listen to all that unwritten verbal feedbacks. Basically most of the written feedbacks are biased. Basically when you ask somebody to write something, they will think about it. But when it comes to like, getting a first-hand exposure, it's always verbal thing. You get with them. When I get to them in the basketball court, they will always like, there are small things. Basically they will say, maybe even this basketball court need a little bit of beautification. Even this would need something. So those are like very informal talks which they talk to me. And as I mentioned earlier, right, there are a lot of things that we can do very immediately. There are things that will take a little bit of time. So it's very important to get along with teenagers, getting to know their perspective. Because to be very honest, we are not the school which has a huge number of students. We just have around 700 students from grade 1 to 12, and the highest number of students that we are expecting is not more than 1200s. So we have a small class size, and that is what we are trying to cater. So yeah, when it comes to that, with the other schools, we have a lot of schools nearby where people are still not able to accept what we are doing. But we have already understood that this is what we have to do, this is what we have to do, and this is what we will be doing. So that's giving me even I'm facing that challenge. Sometimes I have to also listen to things like which as a principal they want somebody who needs to be very strict. But like if I get very strict to them, then they will not feel comfortable to come and talk to me. So it's getting along. So I'm taking all the blames. I'm taking blames with a smile in my face, and working for my students. So let's see, because since I told you, right, so the school that we have started is just 3 years old. So it will take another 6-7 years to get the results. So maybe we all are in wait and watch condition now.
Actually, it's very good to know that we are getting business school teacher to come back to a school and improve things here. That's where you very rightly mentioned that every form of written feedback has some element of bias. And to go beyond that, you'll have to go into verbal feedback, and that requires a very deep level engagement that you're able to figure out in some of the other way. I think it's a very good suggestion for all the people who are there on this call, who would be listening to this video on YouTube, that if you within your institution have the capability, time, start interacting with your students, your teenagers, to get a much more deep, unbiased verbal feedback. Because this is something that's essentially missing in the complete education ecosystem globally. And why I say this globally, I say this with a lot of responsibility. After talking to so many school leaders, we know it for sure that we do not take teen feedback seriously. And that has to now be taken seriously, because the kind of consumer that you have right now within your classroom is not going to go by your book. He has his own book at home that he'll be following. So I want to bring in a little more, sense into the complete discussion. When we talk to a teenager, when we talk about feedback, when we talk of creativity, I would again go back to this question, that can we really visualize a successful society with the kind of teens that we have who are not ready to go deep into anything? The attention span is low is okay, but can we imagine a society with people not going deep into any subject? William, I want your thoughts on it, and then we'll move to Sunita ji, that can we imagine a society where teens don't go deep into anything?
Well, I think if you wanted to go deep into something, you better make it interesting. I think that's the problem, is that I'll just give you an anecdote. Okay, last year my son was in an online class because everything was shut down. And this was, and I'm a professional in online education. I've been doing it for 30 years. And this was the worst soul-killing platform I'd ever seen. I think they only called his name once the whole year. And he had his iPhone, he had his computer, he had his little Chromebook. He had like 3 or 4 screens going all the time. And I said, well, how do you keep up with this? He goes, be quiet, I'm trying to pay attention. And so and then this year, I'm always going to be so happy to be back in school with all his friends. And he said, Dad, I'm really worried I'm going to get bored. And I don't think that they have short attention spans. I think that we present them with a world that is boring and it is not interesting to them. And it is human nature to deep dive into something that you're terribly interested in, that grabs you, that you have a passion about. And we need to encourage them to find out what their passion is. When my son gets onto something, he's like a dog on a bone. You just can't make him stop. And I thought, well, boy, I wish I had that kind of magic I could spread around to everybody else. I think the problem is us. I think the problem is not kids skimming along the surface. Sure, they do what they have to do. They know the rules. They know what they need to do to get through school and to meet the expectations of the teachers. But I think that we are really failing them is that we are not engaging them at a level that calls them into a deep dive into anything. That's just my opinion. Okay, so and I certainly could be wrong, but I know that when we get a kid engaged in something, whether maybe it's Dungeons and Dragons, maybe it's gaming, maybe it's any number of things. My son he plays games, and he can tell me the math. He leads teams of people to accomplish objectives, and I don't think. I mean, of course, I think he's special, but I don't think he's like that special. I think he's just a normal kid, and we should be providing them with opportunities to exercise themselves. Rather than saying this, there's lots of ways to teach math. There's lots of ways to teach writing. There's lots of ways, and I don't know why we think there's only one way for them to sit down at a desk and be quiet and listen to us. Anyway, that's sorry, Dax. That's my opinion on it.
I think that's the kind of opinion we are waiting for on this platform, when people come and say that the real problem is with the adults, not with the teenagers, because they have a much interesting, much more immersive, much more curiosity-driven worldview within themselves, which we don't let them draw out. They know world better. The problem is we believe that we have learned a lot in our lives. Let's transcend this knowledge to them. The problem is they don't want that. They want to create their own new set of knowledge. So Sunita ji, over to you. Do you think that the kind of students that we have, are we liberating them enough? And most importantly, what William talked about, are the teachers really giving them that kind of a space? Over to you.
I truly agree with Williams, because if we don't give space to our own kids, we really face a problem. If we don't help make the atmosphere of the school happy going, we don't give them interesting topics, we don't give them interactive sessions, we don't give them project-based learning, then we don't engage them. And when we don't engage them, we don't get better results. Once we start engaging them, our kids by themselves will start learning. When we start making them learn the project-based way, they get engrossed, they do their own research work, they come up with different ideas, they bring up their own creativities, and they form many things. From one thing, you can get 20 to 25, 100 different ideas. If you have got 10 kids in your class, or 25 kids in our class, you will get 250 different ideas. But we over here with our education, base is really changing, but still the change has to come through the educators, through us. So it is that we have to engage our kids. To this, I will just relate to a small example. My kid recently was in an expo where she was for 4 days. She worked out over there by herself. She made different products. She was able to sell it. And it was really fun time for her. So after all the expo, she herself tells me, it was really fun. It was really enjoying. From making to selling to marketing to even understanding the product, even telling people, selling it. So each and everything the child has learned. It was a life learning, but where we engage, where the whole system engage, change routine from their daily routine to a different routine, where the child is learning through learning even and understanding even and implementing it through the real life situation. So over here, really, we have to change a bit. We have to engage our kids. We have to go a bit deep. As you say, we have to go a bit deeper. We have to just put a thought in their minds with the different ways. I feel prior we used to do it, but now because of the pandemic situation, we have got 3 different type of people, 3 different type of children. Our even situations as leaders have got the same problems. We have got one where we want the education system to come into line, come in the profit-based part of it. Then the second part is learning of the child, bringing them to the base of learning. And over here, we also want them to be happy with the education system. Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much, Sunita ji. And yes, real life experiences, letting them create products, market them and selling them. So I think we all now understand one thing for sure, that as adults, as educators, as school leaders, there's some challenge that we need to face first and then, put those challenges in front of the teenagers. So I think one of the teen who's here with us, Pravash, has a very good, takeaway for home that, okay, the problem is with the adults, not with us. So it's a good news that you can share with your friends. And the problem, we have tried to define it within the last 30 minutes, that what exactly is the problem with the adults. And we are finally able to figure out a little bit sense of what a teenager really wants. So we are nearly at the conclusion of this call. Blub World as an organization works on a very simple idea. When we started working with teenagers, we felt that most of these teens are missing context. And what do we mean by context? Most of our stories, most of our things that we tell them are old, are archaic. They cannot relate to them. So we said, let's find new stories. And those stories have to come out from teenagers. So we worked on the simple idea of teens inspiring teens. So one such story for all of you today, before this call comes to an end. This story comes to you all the way from Melbourne, Australia. This is about a teenager who started a painting career at the age of 9 months, had a complete sold out painting expo at the age of 4, was invited to one of the most respected galleries to do an expo at the age of 7 in Europe, was invited to one of the most respected galleries in the US in New York, from where William comes, to do an expo. And that also was a sold out show. That teenager has never went to school. She's homeschooled. Right now, she's only 14 years old and is a millionaire. And she's known as the world's youngest professional painter. And she was on the cover page of Blub World just some months back. And that's Elita Andre, the world's youngest professional painter. And that's what we do every single month, trying to find teenagers who are doing superbly well in life and sharing their stories with all our amazing teenagers. And with this, we are trying to build the world's first and the biggest parliament of teenagers. If you have a teen around you who thinks that he can solve a local or a global problem, the World Teen Parliament will train him, mentor him, and fund him to finally realize his or her dream. The only thing that they'll be spending at the World Teen Parliament will be their intelligence. Thank you so much, everyone, for being a part of the Blub World Web Talks 181st episode. Thank you so much, all the speakers. Thank you so much who was listening to us on YouTube and who might be listening to us. Keep telling us in the comments, what do you want to listen to next in the Blub World Web Talks? All the speakers who are here, thank you so much. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, and if you want to attend the future sessions, open your audio, say a big yes, and thank you so much, everyone. Have an amazing evening ahead. Namaste.